All right, everyone. Today we're going to do a little discussion about drones and the market that they're in. I had not really an idea what a drone was, except for the guy in the mall with the helicopter that would like chase you around at Christmas time, and you'd be like, "Get away from me!" Like swat it away. This little stupid helicopter. So I was skiing out in Colorado, and with my girlfriend, and she was just learning how to ski, so I skied ahead of her, and I was waiting halfway down the slope, and all of a sudden I see this guy approaching her with like something chasing him. I'm like, what is that, a bird or something? He's skiing down, skis past me. I just ski behind him, and it was a drone following behind him the whole way down the mountain, like maybe 20 feet behind him. And I was like, what is that? So I caught up to him. I started talking to him. What is it? What do you use it for? He basically had the drone, and it was linked to his watch, and it would use GPS signals, and it would follow him around. And it was so advanced that it would miss like trees or ski lifts or anything like that. So I'm talking to the guy, and then I realized I left my girlfriend on the slope. So, but it's interesting, just a little visual of what I'm talking about. It's unbelievably cool. So this is kind of what I saw on the slopes, and this is just how far drones have come. You don't even need to control them by a controller anymore. They can be totally automated. I mean, just like this, flying right behind the guy, and it's pretty cool what they can do nowadays. So one of the things a lot of people are using drones for nowadays is to film themselves. I mean, you see it on YouTube all the time. They have funny drone crashes around weddings. They have like extreme sports are really starting to utilize it.
Yeah.
Whether it's
My daughter's husband is called Jimmy Chin. He's a very famous mountain climber. And he doesn't earn his money by mountain climbing, it's by extreme photography. And instead of hanging from a rope 2,000 feet in the wide, what he does is he has drones. And he rents the drones, he doesn't own them. And he says they are great, but they crash. So he never puts his expensive cameras on them, only the cheap ones. I'll see if I can get him sometime to call in and tell you about his drones.
Yeah, a lot of the drones, the ones that they attach the GoPro right onto the bottom of it. So the GoPro only runs. You get a cheap one for about $300. So it's a cheap alternative for people that really want to add a new dimension to what they're trying to film. All right, so today we're going to go over what a drone is. We're going to give you a brief history of drones. We're going to discuss drones today. We're going to go over the future of drones, and then we're going to look at the regulations that are in place or going to be in place for drones, and some of the implications and controversies that surround drones. So what is a drone? Drone is an aircraft without a human pilot on board. It's sometimes referred to as a UAV, an unmanned aerial vehicle. Flight is controlled either autonomously by an onboard computer or by the remote control of a pilot on the ground or in another vehicle. UAVs have most often been associated in the past with the military, but they are also used for search and rescue missions, surveillance, traffic monitoring, weather monitoring, firefighting, and I believe Sophie will discuss some more of the uses of drones later. So a little brief history about drones. Believe it or not, in 1898 was kind of the first start of drones. At an exhibition at Madison Square Garden, inventor Nikola Tesla wows audiences with a small unmanned boat that appears to change direction by his voice. Obviously, it wasn't done by his voice in 1898. He was using radio transmission to switch a motor on and off, and people were amazed by it. The next development was really in 1940. That's when actor and hobbyist Reginald Denny sold 15,000 radio-controlled target drones to the U.S. military. They used these for anti-aircraft training for World War II. Then in 1943, the German military debuted the FX-1400, or the Fritz X, and this was a 2,300-pound bomb with 4 wings and a radio control so they could kind of maneuver it. This was a breakthrough for guided aerial weapons. It was also the first remotely controlled munition put into actual operational use. Then in 1982, at the outbreak of hostilities with Syria, Israel was able to outwit Soviet anti-aircraft technology by using a swarm of unmanned aircrafts to draw it out into revealing the anti-aircraft missile's location. Then in 1995, this was a really big one, was the General Atomics MQ-1 Predator UAV. This entered into military service, and you guys probably know it. In the decade following 9/11, it was one of the it was kind of like the face of drones. I mean, we used it in the war on terror in Afghanistan and Iraq pretty regularly. Then in 2010, the Pirat AR drone was a smartphone-controlled quadcopter, debuted at the Las Vegas Consumer Electronics Show, and this is really where the quadcopter drone that are being used for the video I just showed. That's kind of where it all started. Then in 2012, Congress made a ruling that was going to require the FAA to make a ruling on drones and get them into our airspace by 2015. A little more on that later. And then in 2013, on 60 Minutes, Amazon CEO Jeff Bezos unveiled an unbelievable plan to initiate delivery drones. All right, he wants to have the future service called Prime Air. So basically, the service is going to allow people to, within a 10-mile radius, to place an order and have it shipped via Prime Air, and it'll be delivered to your house within 30 minutes. So I mean, that's pretty unbelievable, that's for sure. Then in 2014, the FAA, this was the first thing that they granted. They granted an exemption to TV and film production companies for drone use.
Good morning, everyone. Today I'm going to talk about a little bit about the present state of drones. Who's making them? Where are they? Who's buying them? And what are people buying them for? And the market size. So who's making drones today? There's a lot of startups coming in around Silicon Valley and San Francisco and California and throughout other places in the United States that are usually funded through crowdsourcing or crowdfunding projects where a lot of different people online give them a small amount of money to help start their ventures. The largest producer of drones in the US is 3D Robotics Incorporated. They expect to sell thousands of pizza-sized drones, which are probably about this big. And people use them for various things like photography, like the professor said, and other various uses. But the interesting thing is Chris Anderson, the co-founder of the company, stated this time as the dawn of the aerial age, where he's thinking that a lot of manufacturing and a lot of production is going to kind of just go towards drones and making drones better and utilizing drones throughout business practices. Their main competitor is the Chinese company DJI, which is the largest drone manufacturer in the world. And in 2013 alone, they sold about $130 million worth of drones. So like I said, where are they being made? They're mostly designed in Silicon Valley, in San Francisco, around the Bay Area. But what a lot of businesses are starting to do, like 3D Robotics, is because their competitors in China, such as DJI, are producing drones for less, they're starting to move manufacturing processes abroad, like many other industries. So you still have a lot of demand for engineering and designing jobs in the US, but as time goes on, there's going to be a movement for the manufacturing jobs to be moved abroad. So who's buying them? Usually the military was buying them, but as time goes on with the US activities throughout the Middle East are starting to decline, there's starting to become a greater interest in the commercial market. So the industry turned from $2.5 billion in last year, and it's expected to grow another 15 to 20% as it has done over the last couple of years. Most companies believe that the commercial industry is where they're going to have the most profit going forward. So they see a lot of uses such as oil monitoring drones that will fly up and down pipes. Like in Alaska, they already have some. But the companies like to think of it as the Model T movement, where you have no one having any cars, where all of a sudden this amazing invention comes. Everyone has this idea that you can move anywhere you want in such a short period of time, and within 10 years, the Model T changed the country, and they believe that drones will have the same effect. So this chart just shows a little bit about what the permits consumers are buying with their drones, because right now, the way the regulations are set up, you usually have to buy a permit, and the permits are designed for different uses. Like we have photography, we have cinema, film, we have surveying. This just gives you a nice little breakdown of what most people are using drones for today. And now finally, the current drones market size. The global market is estimated to reach 4.5 billion this year, and that's an increase from 3.3 last year. It's continuing to grow at a more rapid pace every year. They eventually think that it's going to reach 11 billion if it keeps going at the rate it's going by 2020. And the most remarkable thing is that in this year alone, venture capitalists have already invested $172 million, which shows that a lot of different people are thinking the same thing about drones. They see the potential and the future in the market and its practical uses.
Hello everyone. So there's this quote that, I think it was Ben who found it, and it's really, really cool. Think of us like Intel or Windows for the industry, said Airway Chief Executive Jonathan Downey. Drones are used for a wide variety of applications, and we need to enable this diversification. So there are a bunch of different future uses that are outlined here, varying from an array of different sectors and industries. The ones that I'm going to be talking about more in detail are emergency services and disaster relief, and further down, urban planning. But just to go through a few of the rest of them, like they're being used tremendously with security and police services, agriculture, environmental management, severe weather tracking, media communication, and as Corey said earlier, for recreational and entertainment purposes is like basically like a big area of where they're being used, and like what the professor said with his son-in-law. Emergency services and disaster relief recovery. So I don't know if you guys have been following the news, but there was a recent earthquake in Nepal. I read several different articles, and the numbers that I've read were like disastrous. Anywhere between 7,500 and 10,000 people were killed. Entire cities and villages were flattened. But two organizations really stepped up. One called Kaddish, which is an Indian aerial company, and Global Medic, which is another humanitarian organization, but they deal more with like water and sanitation. And they really were able to use drone technology to help different survivors bring food and medicine and tents and all these different things that you need during disaster time. And they were able to do it in such a short amount of time versus like the traditional landscaping the area, finding out who's hurt, finding out who's not hurt. And it's just a really efficient and effective way to help in disaster-prone areas. If you have time, there was this really cool study that I read last night. The American Red Cross released it in April, right before the disaster, and it outlined all the benefits of using drones in disaster recovery, so I really think you guys should check it out. Urban planning, real estate, architecture, and engineering. So this, I want to call these sectors because they're kind of interrelated, but they are going to be kind of like besides commercial, well, I guess it is commercial, but they are really going to be like leading the industry, I think, next, because they've already gotten waivers and permits to use drones in their industry. It says here in my notes that the companies are, Trimble, I don't know how to pronounce it, but I'm going to say the acronym VDOS, Clayco and Woolpert are different. They have different specialties, but basically they're agriculture, offshore monitoring rigs, and different architectural engineering companies. They are allowed to use drones that are 55 pounds or less, as long as they're flown within the boundaries of their operation and they have someone overseeing the drone capabilities. And Transportation Secretary Anthony Fox, he made an announcement recently saying that he believes that the new wave of unmanned aircraft will offer a tremendous opportunity to spur innovation and economic activity by enabling many businesses to develop better products and services for customers and the American public. So check these companies out. I thought that they were really great case studies. I just, it's a 20-minute presentation and we don't have much time to get into everything. Future, where the market is headed. As demand for military drones has declined for some companies, they look towards commercial markets to expand their businesses, as I just mentioned, and the speed of which drones will grow dependent on when regulations will be loosened. So you see, like around the 10 mark area, there's like the blue hobby, and then there's commercial, and you kind of see like an upward lift. And Matt really talked about this in great detail about 2020 and the $11 billion mark. So I think it's going to be interesting to see within the next few years like how the economy grows and like the spur of the revenue and the business. Current regulations. So right now, there aren't like fast and hard rules in regards to drone regulations. They are really trying to like set different proposals and different agendas. But for right now, from what I've read, in 2015 there was we are in 2015. They're going to hopefully have something definite by the end of the year, they're saying. But for right now, there's a waiver application that some companies can apply for. Not many have been successfully granted waivers. Drone operators have to obtain like special permits if they are going to be able to use the drones in their industry. Some of the caps in the rules say that you're only allowed to have a 55-pound one flying up to 500 feet above the ground at speeds of 100 miles per hour. And there are a handful of other restrictions, like avoiding hazardous sites, restricting airspace, people, airports, and other areas. State and local government are really apprehensive about drone usage because they feel that if like different hobbyists or like people in the area are like using drones, they feel it's like kind of like their responsibility to monitor and regulate it, and they're really like unfamiliar with like aircraft and industry rules. So it's still kind of very limited, but hopefully that within the next couple of months we'll see more we'll see more regulation on it. The FAA selected several states to test out drones. New Jersey is actually one of them, along with New York and Dakota, Alaska, Texas. But one cool thing that I did read was that Virginia Tech and Rutgers University are set to examine the different implementations, successes, failures of drones use. So props to Rutgers. And I think that's really everything that I wanted to cover. I'm going to pass it over to Ben.
So I'm mostly going to be talking about different controversies surrounding drones, but before we get into that, just in the context of this class, we thought it was interesting just to bring up some of the big data implications. There were plenty of quotes surrounding that, but this was a really good one, and I'm just going to read it. It says, "Where will the next trillion files be created? Broadly, the Internet of Things," which we kind of started discussing, but not really. But drones, or UAVs, are going to be a massive source of that information. And the reason why there's going to be so much information coming from drones in the future is because of all of the sensors and the data that they can capture, which prior to this project I really was not aware, and it's incredible. I am putting a tiny, tiny list of the vast things that drones are capable of collecting. One example is gas leaking from a pipeline. So a drone can be flying over with a sensor that you and I would be very difficult and would take a lot of time to be able to detect, and a drone within minutes, using its sensors, could detect gas leaking from a pipe. So that's one thing. A huge push right now is in the agriculture industry, where drones are being used, and I linked to a site that I'm going to open. I wasn't going to, but I think it's worth looking at. This is one company that does it, where drones can be used, and the sensors that can be put on these drones can be used to diagnose a whole field, a whole crop within, it said it took about an hour just to fly the drone over the area, and then within a fraction of that time, it can show some pretty detailed and interesting information. So this is just kind of like a mock-up of what it would look like. So the drone is flying over. It's got all these sensors and cameras that are taking images of the land, and then let me get to. All right, so some of the things that it can analyze. I mean, maybe this isn't that cool, but I thought it was pretty cool. So, takes everything that it compiled, the images, the different data compiled from the sensors, and then they can show something that looks like this. Now, to you and me, it really means nothing because we don't know what we're looking at. But to a farmer, to someone who's really trying to make sure that their things are doing well, this makes a lot of sense. They can see this image in particular is showing what areas are deficient in nitrogen, which is important to people growing crops. You can detect if things are underwatered or overwatered, and adjustments can be made very easily. And it's things that I don't think in the past would be very easily seen or noticed in any other way. So anyways, so that's another one. 3D mapping is huge. I did not put a lot of the data that can be captured, and a lot of it's still being developed, and a lot of it, even though it's there, isn't being used due to the lack of regulations right now. Commercial drones aren't really able to be used because the regulations aren't there. Hobbyists, hobbyists, and like, if you just wanted to go get a drone and fly it around your backyard, fine. But if a company wants to use them, unless you're granted one of these waivers, which has increased over the last year tremendously, but it's still very small, they can't really be used. However, drones are going to be used commercially, and we're going to talk about some of the controversies surrounding that in a second, but whether you think it should be or not, they're going to be there. And when they do come, it's going to have huge implications for big data. There's going to be this new, huge, big data that's just what we do with it. It's going to be incredible. And this was the quote that I thought just kind of summed it up perfectly. Drones aren't really anything. It's the data that the companies are after. Drones are just a means of getting to it. Drones are cool. It's kind of cool to see like this thing flying around, or you might think it's creepy. Regardless, it's not really the drone, it's what the drone is capturing and the data that it can get and provide. That's really what people want. So with that being said, I'm going to go into 3 different areas of controversy. This is kind of the part of the presentation where if you have a comment or a question or just something you want to say, it would be welcomed.
Okay, so do you guys think drones are creepy? How many of you think
that was going to be my first.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. No, it's fine. Go ahead. I mean, you might not have thought about it. I, to be honest, didn't really think about it prior to doing this presentation because I had never seen one, and I guess I just didn't care. And I'm still personally kind of torn, I guess, between if I think it's creepy or useful or, and most of my decision has been kind of swayed by the fact that everyone you talk to that has anything to do with this is saying it doesn't matter what you think, they're going to be here. So to me, it's kind of like, all right, I guess I should just get used to the fact that they're going to be here. But yeah, I guess how many people do think it's kind of creepy to have something flying around that can detect things that you probably don't even know that it can detect? Creepy, useful, I don't know. The first thing I want to talk about is invasion of privacy. Is it an invasion of privacy? Is it just something that we have to accept and realize that we have to give up a little bit to gain all of this? It's kind of just something that you have to decide. And it's these debates that I think are going to spurn a lot of the regulations that will or will not be in place. And this year, 2015, was the year that was kind of like a self-imposed deadline for we need to get something, because I don't think it was mentioned before, but everywhere else in the world, drones are used commercially and in big ways. So America, I mean, if we don't start to figure it out soon, we're going to be even more behind than we already are, because we are behind in terms of, there's countries that, I think it was in Australia, there's a country that, I mean a company that, it's a small company, and this is a little example, that uses drones to deliver textbooks. I forget the name of the company. But that's, I mean, that's how accepted they are in other countries, that even a textbook company for students, you can order it and it just delivers it to you. So we are definitely, we're not even close to that here, so we're behind. But one of the things that was just to get you thinking, could it lead to a company collecting and then selling information, kind of linking back to yesterday's presentation? For example, I was reading something that someone posed, doesn't mean it's going to happen, but let's say Amazon does get their drone delivery service going up. Now, you might just be thinking, cool, a drone's going to deliver, but what does that entail? The drone's got a camera on it, a drone's got to have your address on it, so it's going to know where you live. It's going to have cameras that it needs to sense where to land and not run into stuff, so then it's going to theoretically be able to capture a little bit more about where you live and stuff like that. Could this data be sold? Could it be sold to the government? Could it be sold to someone else that uses, who knows? So would that be something that would kind of freak you out, or would make you not be so on board with using drones? Or is it, I'd rather have the, sorry, I'm not looking at this side.
Okay. I mean, I feel like all that information is already pretty out there. Like, it's not like it's difficult for the government to like use Google like Earth to go in on your house, you know, like everyone basically knows where you're living, what you're doing. And if you're a person of interest, of course the government's gonna like, you know, spy on you, whatever means there is. But I think I definitely agree with you. It's like one of those things that like you just have to get used to, because it's coming around, you know, like whether or not you like it, it's just a matter of fact, I think.
Yeah, I agree. Personally, I don't care. I agree with you. Like,
yeah,
if someone really wants to figure out where I live and what they're gonna figure it out.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not that hard. But it's just an easier and more efficient, and just the concept of a company like that getting that data so easily and then just turning around and selling it seems kind of.
I mean, Amazon already has like all of the information,
totally
right? Like
agree.
you can literally save your credit card numbers, you can save your like house address. You never have to do anything like when you have Amazon. So it's not like they don't already have that information. It's, I mean, it's an ethics question whether they're going to sell it or not.
Correct. Yep. The biggest problem is there aren't policies in place. That's the thing. They're trying to get policies in place. Currently, it's being left up to state and local levels to kind of regulate stuff. So
the state that takes care of it.
yeah, I'm just going to use this example. Another issue is trespassing on on property. So I was reading an article about this woman who owns a pretty big farm, and her nephew got a drone and he was flying it over, showing her like, oh look, I can like take pictures of all of the stuff, we can check on the cows over here, you can look at the corn over here, blah blah blah. And she was like totally on board with it. She's like, this is awesome. Like, I can sit in my house, I don't even have to go out, I can check, make sure there's no problems. Until he flew it up to the window and was looking in her window And now that's not what really, she didn't mind the going into the window so much. Then she started thinking, so I've got all these environmentalist groups on my back, checking to see if, I think one of the things she was saying was, there's this one group that gets on her back about, are her cows pooping too much or too close to the river and contaminating the water or whatever, and they've been like trying to get her land pushed back from that, whatever. Her thing was, so now what if one of these groups gets some drones and they can just fly it over my land and be in my space? How can that be regulated? And her biggest thing was, even if they do make these regulations, all it's really going to be is a more expensive way for them to do it, because they're going to do it, get fined, and then they're going to do it again. There's no way to like put up a wall or something that keeps people out. So the next thing I was going to just kind of ask was, trespassing on property, is that something that would bother you, or just kind of, are you okay giving up your personal space, which really hasn't, I don't think, been invaded too much. Like, I have a fence in my backyard, no one goes in it, it's my space, but I can't really protect if someone's flying a drone over. I can complain, they could get fined, I could shoot it, probably get fined myself, I don't know. But that was just another thing, which I didn't really think of, but I guess it was a good point on her part. Like, now all these people can get into her space, and yeah, they're trying to do their job, but it's not, will it be illegal? I don't know, it's weird.
You see these cases in the media all the time. I don't know if anyone watched Modern Family, but
Yeah.
one of the recent episodes,
I wish that we had time, like 5 minutes to show that, like, part of the episode was hilarious.
there was a drone, and one of the donkeys thought that they were spying on one of the ladies in the bikini, so he tried to shoot down the drone. And I think he did shoot down the drone.
Yeah, eventually he got it.
But yeah, so because there's so much going on, like there has to be some organizations that are trying to regulate this.
Yeah, so that's the thing. They're coming up with these regulations. It's just very tough. How do you? I think one of the problems is it's now that they've got to figure this out. And do you want to give up too much too quickly? And then you're like, crap, what did we just do? Do you start off a little too hard and then ease up? I think they're just going to come out with something. And it's more for commercial things, because really, hobbyists are allowed to do what they want with them. You could go buy a drone and fly it around and inadvertently be on your neighbor's property, and it's not a problem.
Don't land in the White House.
Yeah, don't do it that way. That was not good. But I don't know. I'm sorry. It's like more of an open-ended kind of thing. I'm not giving good answers, but it's really because these are the things that I think are going to start like making the regulations and shaping what they are, because this is totally new. There's never been like, oh, we can fly things wherever we want. Now, one of the things was, and I wish I saved the picture right now, there's restrictions on how high you have to be or how low you can go. But in my opinion, that was the stupidest thing, because who cares? You can put a camera on it, you can put whatever sensors on it, they can capture stuff from whatever height. So the height to me was kind of a stupid thing that someone said.
Isn't it for not hitting into airplanes?
Right, you have to be below airplanes, but then there was also, back in the 70s, there was a case that was brought that some farmer was trying to say like, this is my land, and some amount of feet above it is also considered like my space. So there is regulations, I think, already of how low you can go, and obviously how high you can go, because airplanes get like, the picture was like, it showed this is space for airplanes, this is something else. Drones would kind of fit in here, and then this is considered like your airspace, even though you can't like do anything with it, but it's kind of your space.
That's like the ocean. There's a certain number of miles, 200 miles, that belongs to a country, and after that is international ocean.
Right.
And, but this is a question of anachronistic laws, because I bet you that the altitude laws come from some old case law.
Right,
and probably doesn't apply there.
Exactly. So now it's like a matter of catching up laws that were made and making them more relevant today.